Hello everyone, welcome to Ironworks. So in this video I'm going to show you how to make a very simple hinge. Blacksmiths have been making hinges forever. I mean, since the dawn of, well, us needing doors to swing open for us nice and easy and not have to just prop them against an opening. So this is a very simple, very stylistic type, very stylish little hinge, and I hope you guys will enjoy. So the starting stock size for this is going to be 3/4 inch. Well, it's going to be 3/4 inch wide material by 1/4 inch thick. Now, you can make this out of really just about any size or thickness material depending on your purpose. So if you want this to be bigger, make it a much bigger, honkier hinge, or smaller, just size it appropriately with the material that you have at hand. And as you can see, I've put some marks on here. I have made a mark that is 2 inches back from the end, and then I have made 3 dot marks where it's going to be later cut off here, and this part will be rolled up into the barrel of the hinge or the eye of the hinge. This part here is measured out at exactly 6 inches long. So for those of you across the pond, that is 50 mil in here and 150 mil to there. And then that's of course 6 mil flat bar stock by, I believe that's 20 mil, is 3/4 inch there. Again, so my friends across the pond, you can drop your comments down below and correct me on my metric math there. So I've got one side of a bar, a long bar, easy to hold on to, marked out like that. And I have the other side of the bar marked out like that because a hinge always has 2 parts to it. And so we'll get into why and lengths and all that stuff here in just a little bit. But first step up, we need to go ahead and split this from this end to this dot. And that's our first, pretty much our first objective. And then we will cut that off. And then likewise, we will do the same over here on this side as well. All right, so I got the bar all warmed up here. I'm going to pull it out here to the anvil. And I'm going to start from the very end, looking for about dead center with my slitting chisel. And I'm going to rock it back up onto the piece. And then I'm going to keep driving this down and just making a mark right now. That's what we're looking for. We're just wanting to make a straight line before we go whole hams. And we want to come all the way down to that 2 inch mark or 50 mil mark. Once we've got a good line that we're happy with, we can progress this by really giving it the mustard. And cutting down through the piece. Now you want to stop before you go so far as to hit the anvil surface. As you can see, I don't have a cutting plate or anything like that on here, but you want to stop before you hit the anvil surface, so don't go too deep with this. But as you can see, we've got a nice line up to there. And if you look on the back side, you could just start to see where there's a little bit of a line shadow. Hopefully you can see that anyhow. Grab Mr. Thing here. So if you look right here, about dead center, if you can imagine it, you can almost see that shadow line. It's a little bit better once it's warmed up just a bit more. So we'll get it hot again, and then hopefully then we can come back from the other side now and cut from that side. And we'll get this split. All right, so you don't need it blazing hot. I know on the camera it makes it look that way, but it's not overly blazing hot right now. It's about a bright orange. On camera it might look a little hotter than that. But really you just got to find that groove that you've previously cut. And that's where we're going to start working our piece down through. From this side. Come from this side again. I generally like to finish it out straight through there. The smoother you are with this cutting action here, the better off you'll be. You see how I kind of pulled that apart there? You can start seeing it just now. You can start seeing it starting to cut right through the piece. It's starting to shear right through the piece. That's the point in which you want to switch to having a cutting plate. So you'll lay down a cutting plate here. and you'll drive all the way through. Once it's cooled down a little bit, you find that little crack that got started, and this is how you shear the piece open. If you keep chasing this while it's hot, so if you do this while it's blazing hot, that little web will just keep bending back and forth on you, because the material is going to move out of the way as you force it, okay? But if you let it chill down to where it's, dark, where it gets down to a black heat, it very easily pops open, and that rag is less to deal with. It's easier to clean up that way, and it's a lot quicker. So just keep that in mind when you're making stuff like this. You take it, use all spectrums of the heat range when making items like this. You'll find that it really helps out. So there you go, we got that split just like that. Now while it's on the long bar, I'm gonna go ahead and do my decorative finial because it's easy to hold on to. I don't have to hold on to it with a pair of tongs. This what makes this a great beginner hinge project for anybody who's wanting to undertake this, is because you have a long handle. Cut you a piece that's 2 foot long or so and work with it like that until you have to cut it off and hold it with a pair of tongs to forge out this element, to forge out your, your hinge or the barrel of your hinge. So there we go, we'll put that down. And now while this is, we'll get this hot again and we're gonna forge this into the decorative element. All right, now that it's at a nice hot forging heat, we're gonna bend one of these legs out of the way, what we like to call in the craft a conveniency bend, just so it's out of our way of forging the other one, just like so. And then we're gonna go ahead and forge out that rag that was on there, that little bit of roughness. You may decide if it's really terrible, you might wanna grind that off or file that off first and foremost. We're just going to make a real simple point on this piece, keeping it nice and square, just like so. And so that's stage one. We got stage one done, which is good. And we'll heat that back up. And we're going to do what we're going to do with that. We're going to spread that out a little bit, make it a little flatter, because we grew some thickness there that we don't want in the final hinge. If I heat this up, okay, so it's nice and hot. Lay it on the anvil, flatten it out a little bit, sharpen it up again. We're just trying to maintain the same thickness for right now. And we're going to give this a little bit of shape now. I'm going to go over the horn. And now, you guys can make this however you like. That's the point of you making it decorative. But this is a very simple hinge to make. We're just going to scroll her up here a little bit. Make her look pretty. I'll get another heat on that and I'll roll that back up a bit more. Again, you can leave this out loose or you can tighten her up. I choose to tighten it up, so that's what I'm gonna do. Once I'm done doing that, I will stick this part back out because then it will no longer be in the way. Get her straightened up just a little bit in preps for that. All right, standing up on the anvil here, just gonna tap this tip around, make a really nice little, tight little scroll with it there. Then I'm gonna set it on the anvil. And again, this is all stylistically your choice. It's just something I'm deciding to do with this one. I encourage you to make a couple and experiment. Now I'm not forging completely. Do you see how it still have about a crook of the pants right there? It still has a crotch in the cut there. Leave that alone. Just actually leave that. It kind of helps, it kind of illustrates where it comes from. Sometimes that's nice to leave there, and it doesn't end in just a dead saw cut or something like that. It's kind of nice if you're doing the chisel work and doing the effort of forging out some chisel work. If it's been clean, go ahead and leave that in a little bit into the hinge. Kind of just helps show off the work that you've put into it. So brush that off real quick. And I'm pretty happy with that, the way that looks there. So now I can take the next heat, straighten this back out, and now I can work out the other half of this decorative little finial. Okay, so while this piece has been at a 90 a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and forge that inner bit of rag there out like that, up close, you know, because I can get up real close to this little bend here, or right up by that crotch of that. And now I'm going to go ahead and straighten that back out, just like so. And now we can go ahead and forge this down to suit. Some nice, quick, careful hammer work can save you a lot of time. So as you can see, looks pretty good, I think. Now we'll go ahead and heat this up a bit more, and we'll stretch out the rest of the way. Look it up. Keep forging this out until I get it where I like it. This particular one, I'm going to go extra long. Again, maintaining original parent bar thickness, or just under, is what we're after. So keeping it at that 1/4 inch, if you will. Well, it's looking kind of nice. Something just like so. So I got that stretched out a little longer, a little narrower than the other one. Now for the final bit of this finial. All right, now for the fun part. We're going to bend this back this direction to follow the curve of our other scroll, just like so. And then I'm going to reverse that curl back, just to where it's kind of pointing back up, about middle line of that bar. I find this to be a very attractive little finial, and it's one of my favorite ones to make, really. Give that, I'm just lightly giving this a slight bevel to the outside, just to get it to lay like the other scroll is laying nicely, and all pieces and parts flat on the anvil. That's what all this work at a very dark heat is. It's just planishing heat. Isn't that an attractive little finial? I've used that on so many different things. And I absolutely love it for stuff like this. All right, so there you go. See? Told you it was simple. We're just doing a little tiny curl over here, just a tiny little scroll here, making sure everything's flat and the scroll's in the same thickness as what the parent bar stock is. And then we're making the same thing. We're just drawing out a little longer on the other side. And then we're just giving that, making it kind of follow the curves and kind of making it go however it wants. Consequently, you could have rolled this up, this side up, like this other side. I find, however, though, it just depends on your application. I find that having something like that draws the eye a bit more, especially when you put them in pairs on something. That style there draws the eye a bit more and looks a little less factory produced than if it was just rolled on both sides. You know, get a little whimsical with one end to make it look like it's flowing off into space somewhere. And, you know, it really kind of helps elevate the ironwork, in my opinion. So, that is ready to let cool. If you're working in a shop and you don't have a lot of options for tongs, my suggestion is you just let this naturally air cool. You don't want to quench this off. You want to just let it air cool. And once it's cooled down, go take a coffee break, you know, go get a drink, do something, grab a bite to eat, whatever, come back, you know, get yourself a sandwich, then come back and do the other side. And that would be my recommendations if you're going to be doing this. It makes it a lot easier, and you just let that cool down naturally. And then when you flip it around, now you've got an easy bar to hold on to on this side to make this end. So I'll be back with you after I get this end done, the same as I've done this end, and then we will have these cut off the bar and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so I got the other side all forged out and I cut off the original side. So this is what you're going to want to do with this half. You'll want to cut them both off at this stage, and you're going to want to find a pair of tongs that'll hold this nicely. This can just be as simple as just a plain set of flat jaw tongs or whatever you have that can hold this thickness here. So you can do something like that. Just anything that you can hold on to it. It's too short now at this point for you to be able to hold on to with your bare digits or fingers. So a pair of pliers or channel locks or something, you're going to have to find something to hold onto your piece with in order to go on to the next step. So as you can see, I've already parted this one from the bar. I did that using, I used my slitting chisel like I've been using this whole thing. I just came down, cut most of the way through, came out to the edge, knocked off, you know, sheared it off, and there you have it. So, and there you go, looks pretty good. So now we're gonna move on to the next step. I'm gonna get this hot, and then we'll go on to this next part. But before we do that, I want to explain what we're doing real quick. So in this, there's many ways of making a hinge eye. To make the actual eye or the barrel of the hinge, as they're most commonly called, is the barrel of the hinge. There's a lot of different methods of doing that. In this particular orientation, you might, well, that's a little small, you're not going to have a lot for the hinge eye. I like thinning the material thickness down by about half in order to roll my eyes of my hinges. If this was a big gate or a railing or something like that, you know, like if this was a big gate or it was going to be a big, heavy, you know, barn door or something like that, you would want to leave as much material thickness in the eye as possible of that hinge, because that needs to be super duper strong. And so you would want this material to thicken up or almost double. But considering this is going to be a very small hinge set for a very small project that I'm working on, we do not need to take in, this does not need to be super heavy, and in fact it's only going to impede us in rolling up a nice eye, and it's going to be just too much bulk and too much heft, and we just really don't need that. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to thin down this material for about a cube of material. So that means we're going to come out however wide this piece is, that's how far in from the end we're going to come, and we're going to thin that down, and then we're going to bend it away and then roll it back up under, and that will make the barrel of our hinge. So I'm going to go ahead and get it hot, and we'll start doing that now. One important thing, one last note on this. Make sure that you don't get the rest of this hot. We want to be focusing mainly just right out here on the tip. If you're in a gas forge, what that means is don't just shove the whole thing way back under the burner. We don't need this whole piece to be blazing hot. We just need this end that we're working hot. That needs to be the hottest part. The rest needs to be gradually cooler as you go back to stop it from bending and wrecking all of your detail that you put into this right here. Okay, so you need to decide which side's going to be your outward facing side and what's going to be the back side of the hinge. And whichever's going to be the outside facing side or the show side of the hinge, you want that pointed straight up. And we're going to take that cube of material and we're going to do half on, half off blows right here at the edge of the anvil. and we're going to thin that material out. Just like so. Now we're going to correct for this width in the next heat. Come back to our shoulder. Pro tip on making these, the smoother or the flashier, you see how that kind of reflects the light at you? The smoother that is, before you roll up the hinge barrel, the better off you'll be. So you want to get that forged out just like you're seeing it here. Again, this is going to become the show side of the piece, and you'll see why here in a moment. And this will become the inside of the hinge, or the part that will face the door or the cabinet or whatever you're working on. Okay, so once you have this forged reasonably smooth, you're going to get roughly about double the length that you started off with if you forge this down by half, which is good, and that's what we're looking for. So remember, this is going to be the back side of the hinge. The smooth side is going to be the front side of the hinge. Now I want to walk you through this step before everything's blazing hot, and maybe you won't be able to see it as well on camera. The next step in this process is to put that little shoulder that you've created by that nice crisp edge on your anvil. You want to put that actually up, and you're going to line that up with the far side edge of the anvil, just like so, and you're going to bend away from that 90-degree corner there. So you want to bend it that way, almost at a 90, and then we're going to roll it back on itself. And that's going to take and offset our eye to this side of our hinge, or the show side of our hinge like it should be. And we'll show you how that works just right now. All right, should be nice and warm right up near that shoulder. We're going to put it to the far side edge of the anvil. We're going to bend that right back away from that bend, from that little shoulder we made. And we're going to smarten that up against the edge of the anvil, just like so. And now we got a nice right angle, 90. Anytime you do an operation like that, you're always going to end up with a little extra material in the corner here that you'll have to just redress. Make sure it's nice and straight. Everything's square. That bend is nice and square. Or it's at least true to your, it's perpendicular, or it's nice and square to the surface of your hinge there. That way you don't have any wonkiness. And at this stage, this is the first setup stage. The next part's the easy part. Rolling the eye isn't really that difficult. The hardest part of this is making sure that your hinge is square. So if it's out of square now, it'll be out of square later. So we don't want to do that. There's things you could do to correct for it, but you want this plane here, you want this portion of your hinge. It's hard to show it on camera. You want this part of the barrel that's going to roll up into the barrel to be square with this portion of your hinge. If you don't, if you skip this step in an effort for brevity and you're trying to just rush through the process, when you go to roll this eye up and you go to put the two eyes together, you're going to have a hinge that's doing something weird like this. You're going to have some weird, dog-leggy kind of weirdness in it, and it's not going to function very nicely. So this is a critical step to make sure that this is set up right. So take extra care at this step to make sure it's square. Now we're not talking square this way. That doesn't matter as much, but we're talking square this way. You don't want any twist in the barrel of that hinge. All right, so now we're ready to go ahead and roll this up. We're going to come right to this edge of the anvil, We're going to start rolling that right up as we go around. As you can see, I could do this almost cold. And in fact, I'm going to do this at a slight dull red heat. I don't want this to be super hot because I don't want to straighten out the work that we just took time to, get all nice and pretty there. So we're going to go ahead and heat this up just a little bit, like a nice dull red, and we'll roll that up. Okay, so I got that piece nice and hot. It's already hot enough for what we need. I want to talk a little bit about this final step when we're rolling it up. In all hinges, you will need to be able to wrap the hinge barrel around the hinge pin of some kind, or a proxy to that hinge pin, what will later be the actual part that connects the hinge together. What I have here is I have a 3-inch drift pin, so or not 3 inch, sorry, excuse me, a 3/8 inch drift pin. So that's 3/8 of an inch diameter, and roughly 10 mil in diameter, or 9 or whatever the heck that is. And then it is tapered on one end with a short taper, and it's got a nice long taper on the other. What this is a great way of forming the eye of a hinge around here, or the barrel of the hinge goes right around this, and this is good stand-in for a 3/8 pin. Now let's say you don't have that and you're just trying to make up a hinge pretty quick. Any raw piece of bar stock that you have lying around will work. Just grind a taper on both ends, just so this way it can clear the hole. The taper needs to be as long as necessary to take and drive it out so it falls and comes out of the hole for the width of the hinge there. So hence the long taper on the one end. That's roughly about 2.5 inch long taper, because when it clears the hinge to a certain point, when it clears the barrel to a certain point, it just falls right out. And I don't take a risk of bratting it in there and upsetting it and it be there for all of eternity. So keep that in mind. You want to grind a small, long, shallow taper to your pin, whatever you choose to use. So we're going to continue this curl. As you can see, I got most of my heat out by the end. We're going to keep this curl tucking around almost like we're rolling a scroll. We're going to make sure that end's nice and tight as we go here. We can snug and sweeten all this up later as well. So if we got a part that we don't like, we can come back in and fix it. We're going to roll that eye right up. We're going to take it up so far as to where we need the pin. So we've done that. Now we can slip that pin in there, and now we can work against our pin to close that hinge up and do any last minute squaring of the hinge eye that we need. And now we have something we can work around our pin to get the exact look that we're looking for, and we can work that straight down to that pin nice and tight till we get a nice smooth fitting joint there. Be meticulous with your hammer blows at this step. Make it look nice, and out that pin comes. And just like that, we have one part of a hinge. As you can see, it lies flat on the back, so it doesn't stick up, but the barrel of the hinge is sticking up where it needs to be, so this way it operates like it should with the other half. Now you can adjust this eye however you want. You get as technical with this. You can roll it up a tighter. Say you don't want that big of a pinhole, you could just roll that up just a little tighter. Again, the length here kind of doesn't matter. You can tighten it all up and then drift it back to size a bit. But this is the easiest way I've found to be able to make a hinge joint really super simple. I know hinges can be a bit intimidating to some when you're first getting started, and it seems like it's a lot of little finicky work. And in a way it is. It just requires you to be just a little more thoughtful and meticulous with your hammer blows, which you should be striving for anyhow as a developing smith. And you know, it just requires a little extra attention to detail, a little bit of care, but you can start making your own hinges no problemo. They really are not that hard or that difficult. So I'll be back with you once I got the other half made. All right, folks. We got two halves of basically almost two identical halves. It's not important that they are identical, but you do want the barrels to line up and be roughly the same size or as close to perfect as you can get them. And that's what we have. We want it to lay nice and flat across our anvil. We want everything nice and square. So when we lay it on top of each other, everything is nice and squared up and looks good. Those barrels look good. Again, the interior of the barrels look good. Everything should be good to go. Now you should be able to take your drift pin and slide it right back through the piece. Give it a couple rat-a-tat-tats, and this whole thing should be on there, and that should be able to be good to go. So now, depending on your application, is going to change somewhat how you actually go about attaching this hinge together. As you can see here, you could do a very simple, let's say if this had like a big nail head on it, you could just simply just drive that down through there like a spike, right? You know, that could look really cool and very gothic looking with this like long sharp taper, you know, out the bottom end of it. You can make like just a spike and that just sits on there. Again, depending on how the hinge is hanging. So for instance, let's say if the door, say this is on the post and this part's the door, you could get away with just a spike put through there, and then the hinge could hang on that and swing just fine and be good to go, and it would never go anywhere, which is one way of doing it. Another option, you could put a bar through here and you could rivet it. You could head it up. You could actually, rivet the hinge on both sides. That is my least favorite option. There's a lot that can go wrong, like misalignment of these two surfaces. And again, remember, these aren't like solid. These are just a wrapped eye. So I would highly discourage against doing a riveted hinge. The other option that you can do is take a factory store-bought bolt and you can go ahead and grind the head of that bolt off to where it's kind of round and looks like a rivet, and do the same thing for the nut. You know, spin the nut all the way up on the head of the all the way up on the head of the bolt, and then grind them round, loosen that nut back off, and then you could put this on, bring that nut up finger tight, and then cut it off, cut the excess bolt off, and then just peen it over a little bit. And so therefore you have some you have a closure, or you have a fastener that later on, if you needed to take the hinge apart, you could file the bottom of that off, that little bratted over area, that little upset section, and then you could just simply take your bolt out. You know, that's one way of doing it as well, to take and get a nice connection that would look really, really well. Now, for this particular hinge setup, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to choose to do that method, and I will do that once I've fitted my hinges to the actual door in question, and the joint is, I know where everything's going to go, right? I want to make sure that you want to do the final fitting and putting together of this hinge when it's actually installed. That way you don't have any alignment issues. So for time being, I would suggest that you just make a pin and shove a pin through here and let it hang just like that until you're ready to finalize it with a more permanent, fastener, if you will. So there you go. Pretty simple to make a hinge, if you will. Now, obviously, this is missing something, right? This is missing some holes. You have two options here. My first option that I feel is the most expedient option that I would recommend for you to do is drill 2 holes, or however many holes you like, depending on how your door structure is or whatever. I would drill 2 holes in each half of this hinge, and then I would drift those holes square, if you will. And that would be a very traditional way of, that would be one traditional way of doing it. The other way of doing that, and traditionally would be done, is to take a Pritchell punch, you know, which is like a little square punch, and punch square holes through this. I find that I'm more accurate with a drill and drifting than I am with taking time and doing all the punch. I could do the punching work, but I find it unnecessary. I don't feel like it gives any more added value in this particular case than if you drilled it and drifted it if you needed that. It gives you a lot more options. If you drill first, you can get accurate holes exactly where you want them every time. And if you decide you want those holes square because you're going to put some sort of maybe like a carriage bolt or something like that on there, then you could just drift it square, and it takes but a few minutes, just a few moments to take and do so. So that would be my suggestion for you. Again, like I said, pretty simple hinge setup. I think just about anybody can do it. Vary the ends, change them up. You can shorten this. This could be a lot shorter, you know. Let's say if it was going on the side of a cabinet, right? Say if this was a cabinetry hinge, you could actually make this end. It doesn't have to be that long. You could shorten this distance up, go however you want there, and really vary it. But anyways, at any rate, I hope this video was helpful to you. If it was, you know the deal. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. Let me know what you thought down in the comment section down below. Go ahead and ask your questions there and stuff like that. If I get a chance to get back to them, I will. And yeah, without further ado, God bless each and every last one of you. And we'll catch you on the next video. Thank you so much for watching.